Okay, so we have a few last minute things to take care of before I can start painting. First being, there's a couple holes in the ceiling that I patched last night with some spackling. Need to sand that smooth. If you want, you can spray a little bit of texture on those patches to make it blend in a little bit better. It's on the ceiling, I'm not too worried about it, and there's only a couple of them, so I'm going to skip the texturing part of that. And the other is around these lights here, these pendant lights that were, those 4 right here, these were those pendant lights that were hanging above the counter here. Previous paint job, they didn't tape off very well and they didn't remove those, so the paint was stuck to them. When I removed them last night, it peeled a big section of paint off of almost every one of them. We need to kind of sand that area smooth a little bit so the paint will stick better today. So just follow along, I'll get started on that and then we'll get started painting. All right. If you have any holes you've patched with spackling, hit them with an orbital sander to smooth flat and feather out the edges. If you don't have an orbital sander, no worries, a sanding block and a piece of sandpaper will do the trick. It will just take a little longer and require a little elbow grease. For a few tips on achieving great results when applying spackling, click this link here. Once you're finished sanding, don't forget to remove the sanding dust from the ceiling before painting. When you are sanding, be sure to wear a dust mask and safety glasses. Check the description below for more information on painting safety. To stay organized in my garage and shop, I store items for particular tasks in large plastic storage bins. All my painting supplies are kept in one of these storage bins. One benefit to this method, beyond keeping your tools and supplies organized, that's specific to painting projects is, I like to use the lid from the storage bin as a tray to set used paint stir sticks, brushes, and rollers on. The raised edge around the lid will trap any accidental paint spills from spreading to places you may not want them to go, and helps keep your job site clean and organized. You can also set the paint can on the lid to catch any drips while stirring. I typically do that when I stir my paint, but clearly it slipped my mind this day. Be sure to stir your paint thoroughly and continue to stir throughout the painting process. As a general rule, each time you refill the tray, give it a quick re-stir. This paint lid with built-in pour spout is very handy and helps prevent messes while filling your tray. Check the description below for a link to take a look at this handy painting accessory. The big tip of the day: if you want to get the painting done faster, use a larger roller cover. Here I'm using an 18-inch wide roller instead of the more common 9-inch rollers. Twice the width, covers twice the area per stroke, and will cut your painting time in half. There are limitations though. If you're working in tight spaces or the surface you're painting is small, an 18-inch roller may actually slow you down and isn't the right tool for the job. But on a ceiling with room to work, it's definitely the way to go. One common mistake I see when painting, and this applies to all types of painting, is laying the paint on too thick to try to completely cover the entire surface in the first coat. Or worse yet, trying to get away with doing only one coat. Both of these will lead to a bad finish. As a general rule, you don't have to get complete 100% coverage in the first coat. If you miss a small spot, or the paint is a little thin in certain areas, don't worry about it. Don't try to hit it again right away with a bunch more paint. Those thin spots or little missed spots will get filled in on the second coat, which leads to the other point. Despite what the paint companies claim about their fancy new one-coat coverage paint and primer in one, there is no such thing as one-coat coverage. If you want professional results and a nice-looking paint job, plan your budget and schedule for at least 2 coats. The big rule of painting is this: several thin coats of paint will always give you better results than trying to get it done with one thick coat. When rolling, to get good coverage, you'll want to partially overlap each stroke with the one before it, but you need to move fairly quickly. Once the paint starts to get a little tacky, you don't want to go back and overlap. If you do, you may start to pull the paint off the wall. Just move on and get it on the next coat. I may start a debate here, but in my experience, applying a primer before painting is generally not necessary. A good quality paint and primer in one makes applying a primer coat unnecessary. There are of course exceptions, like if you're applying a very light colored paint over a very dark color, the additional cost and time of applying primer is probably justified. But you'll have to decide that based on your particular project. And finally, don't forget to cut in along the corners with a brush. I typically use a wider brush for this to cover those areas a roller just can't reach. This should get at least 2 coats as well. I find I get the best results if I do the first cut in before the first coat of paint applied by the roller, and the last cut in coat after the final coat of paint applied by the roller. That way, on the first rolled coat, you can roll up to that cut in line, then later fill in any missed spots on the second cut in coat. It's generally a good idea to let each of the types of coats dry before rolling or cutting in, because if the paint is still tacky, you can pull some of it off the wall with a brush or roller. If you're wondering why I don't seem to care that I'm getting white paint on the walls or why I didn't mask the walls off, click this link right here. This little red paint can I'm using is another handy painting accessory I've discovered. These come with disposable liners and have a magnet to hold your brush. Super handy for brushwork. Check the description below for a link to take a look for yourself.